I mean, they called my office and yelled and screamed at us to just get their sidewalks done. And I mean, so it's people are all over the place on this, but for the most part, I felt like staff did very well. Public Works, as a department, did well in terms of trying to make everything right. And, I mean, I certainly don't think anytime you do an assessment, nobody's ever happy. And that's just the reality. But for the most part, I mean, for what was done, I can appreciate the work that was done by Public Works. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, we have the testimony for the record. We will consider it at our subsequent meeting when we continue this item. So thank you for staff. Moving along to our other public hearing. This one now will be the snow and ice removal from public sidewalks 2016 assessments. Director Kaki.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Kennedy will make the presentation on this item as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, again, Mike Kennedy. Each winter season, the Public Works enforces the city sidewalk shoveling ordinance. Property owners who had snow and ice removed by the city and were billed for the work had the option of paying the bill or have the cost added to their property tax as an assessment. For those choosing the latter, this action is to proceed with the process for collecting those assessments. An assessment letter, again, was sent to the property owners, which included advising them to contact Public Works. It's the same administrative hearing process as the sidewalk condemnation program. And everything that is talked about today is a result of those hearings as well. The properties on the list to be assessed, dated October 13, 2015, is on file with the City Engineer's Special Assessment Office. Had the snow and ice removal work done by the city, were sent a bill for the cost of the removal work, and were notified that a special assessment for the removal charge plus interest would be added to the real estate taxes if the charges were not paid through the billing process. The amount to be assessed as special assessment principal is the cost of the removal work itself. The total principal amount of the proposed assessment on the list of properties to be assessed is $91,709,000. The assessments would be collected in their entirety on the 2016 real estate tax statements with interest. The interest rate will be 2.10%. Information has been provided in the notices as how persons may prepay the assessments in full without interest if they so choose. So today our recommendation is to pass a resolution to adopt the assessments in the total amount of $91,709,000, levy the assessments, adopt the assessment roll, and direct the city clerk to transmit certified copies of the assessment rolls to the Hennepin County Auditor. Again, that concludes my presentation, and I have staff here. We have staff here to answer questions if needed.
Thank you. Any questions for this presentation? Seeing none, thank you. I will open the public hearing. And this is on item 2, and I believe we will start with Ms. Leslie Scaramuzzo and take everyone else in order. And state your name and address for the record.
Leslie Scaramuzzo, 4125 17th Avenue South, Minneapolis. And I really don't want to take a lot of your time. I'm just appreciating the opportunity to come and ask for your consideration on this fine. It basically kind of for an extenuating circumstance, which was I was ill and I had just had surgery and I never saw the notice my nephew was taking in my mail. He didn't open my mail. And I've owned my home for 27 years and served on my neighborhood council for 3 of those. And I really get it about being a good neighbor and keeping my property up. I've never had a citation or problem with that, with my sidewalk or anything before. And I did write an appeal to, and Mr. Bauer helped me with that. I was going to try to get to that other meeting and then I was ill again. But they did send me the information that said it took the crew 5 minutes to remove the snow that already looked like it would all melt. There was snow on the sidewalk, and Mr. Bauer also had that photo. And my nephew was also, as he was taking my mail, he'd also been taking care of that sort of stuff. It didn't look conspicuous or anything to me. I wasn't aware of it. And even in the photo, it's, the footprints, and it's almost just level with whatever powder, little bit of snow was there. So I was kind of, and I understand, they just went ahead and did it anyway, but I don't quite get why they would shovel the snow that already looked like it would all melt by their, So anyway, basically that's all I'm just asking is for some consideration. in forgiveness of the fine or waiving the fine. I would have absolutely taken care of that. I never saw it until after the fact. So that's really all I have to say. And I'm sorry for taking up your time for that. But
No, not at all. Thank you for your
thank you.
testimony. We now have Steve Mildahl.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair. I've got three properties here that the city has asked to assess a snow removal charge on. I should mention that these three and also the previous ones from the previous hearing on replacement, there was a hearing that was conducted on, I believe it was September either 17th or 27th. I was not able to have that hearing. The hearing officer, who was a former city attorney, was not impartial. We've had cases from the late 1990s and early 2000s when he was a city attorney, and I pointed that out in the fact that I won a case against him in 2001, and so he doesn't, in all honesty, he doesn't like me and I don't like him, so he recused himself. So just for the record, I'd like it noted that this is my first hearing. I didn't have that other administrative hearing. So real briefly on the snow shoveling charges, when we get a notice, and I still have, I'm down to 71 properties now. When I have a notice that a tenant hasn't shoveled their sidewalk, and I get it from the city, what I do is I date it and mail it back to the sidewalk department, saying send it to the proper and responsible person under Minneapolis Code of Ordinances and under the law. And I'll in your packet, which is the second clip in your file, it has the Supreme Court case Rudy Scott versus Village of Olivia, and it says quite clearly, since the owner contracted with the tenant for snow removal, the tenant should have received the citation. So when we got on these particular three, I did send the notice to the sidewalk department to send it to the tenant. And believe me, when the tenants get notices from the city, they do things. We've had to work with housing inspections real briefly on things like mowing the grass and this and that. But when I've gotten some of the inspectors now and they can do it under the code, to send orders directly to the tenants, that changes behavior. You'll see that most problems, in especially the north side, are rental properties where tenants aren't maintaining the yards, their garbage are outside the cans. But I've been doing this for 44 years now. And when a tenant gets the order, they take care of it. And it also reinforces the idea that when kids see their parents being responsible, this has an effect on their kids also. So just a little sidelight to that. But the Supreme Court pretty much has ruled on this matter. So the tenant should have gotten the notice. And if they had, they would have taken care of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask the question? And now we're going to take the testimony in order. Thank you, sir. Next in order is Amanda Deloney. Name and address for the record.
Yep, Amanda Deloney, representing 2900 Portland Avenue. It's in South Minneapolis. Did you get the letter that I sent in the mail?
I believe it's in the
So I
mail.
won't take up too much of your time. Everything's in the letter, all of the dates. Mostly I'll just apologize and say that the person who represented the property at the last hearing didn't have all the information. We were dealing with a medical emergency and couldn't get him all of the actual dates. And so he actually had a sort of an incorrect date that he told the hearing officer and that was recorded. And also he didn't have all the complete documentation showing that the deed was actually just recorded, 2 days before the snow removal happened, and that we didn't receive it until February. So I apologize for that didn't get taken care of during that hearing. Otherwise, everything else is in the letter. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Brady Marco, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Brady Markell. I own property at 2425 5th Street Northeast. My property sits on the corner of 5th Street and Lowry Avenue, which, as you know, is a very busy street, receiving probably tens of thousands of cars passing by it daily. It's a 2-lane road in each direction. The sidewalk in question is on the north side of my property, which doesn't receive a lot of sunlight, and the plows come up and down that road several times daily. The house sits probably 8 feet off the street, so it's right on Lowry Avenue. This is a rental property that I own, a Tier 1 rental property that I've owned for 12 years. Had no complaints in those 12 years. I do hire a private contractor to keep that sidewalk clear with a bobcat. The charges in question were from some work that the city crews did on March 6th of last spring. As you recall, it was a very warm spring, and the metro received 20 inches, fewer than the historical average of snow. So it's probably something that the crews were out, maybe bored and looking for work to do. So on the actual day of the work, I don't know, do you guys still have photos that the crews took that morning?
Either we do or staff does, yeah.
Okay, your staff does, great. That day it was 40 degrees, and the forecast going forward from that day called for 60 degrees. So obviously that snow is going to melt. My initial appeal to get the fines completely thrown out, I think the initial fine was $200 and some. It was heard by the administrative hearing officer on September 17th and was reduced down to $164, which I thought kind of odd because it's kind of like being pregnant, right? You're either pregnant or you're not. So either the walks were fine or they weren't. And I found it interesting that, let me find it here, within that letter that I received back from the administrative hearing officer, Mr. Backstrom, he quoted in the other findings section, and this is his words, the owner put the salt on the icy areas and did clear some of the walk. Snow was melting at the time. So I guess I'm a little perplexed. I got a letter, said there was snow, shoveled it, put the ice melt down. Per his words, it was melting at the time. Product was working. It was completely passable. I'm still getting assessed from this work that was done by the city. So, it's kind of just the principle of the matter is, the initial crews went out and did the inspections. That's a couple $100 of taxpayer money. Us sitting here right now, this is several hundreds of dollars of taxpayer money. The hearing on the 17th, again, so this is probably well over $1,000, well over, of city taxpayer money that is, for 60 feet of sidewalk where there was no snow and ice. So I guess if you could just take my dialogue here into consideration and get these charges completely thrown out for me. Again, I've owned the property for 12 years. I've had no snow and ice complaints or any other rental related complaints the entire time I've owned it. Just trying to do my small part in increasing the vitality of Northeast Minneapolis. And every time I am in Northeast Minneapolis, I am encouraged at how the area is improving. So appreciate your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Does anyone wish to come forward? I have no one else signed in. Anyone wish to come forward? I will end the testimony at this time, and then if staff wants to respond to any of the pertinent things that could be helpful to the committee here to understand what we were presented with in testimony.
Good morning, Committee Chair Reich and committee members Paul Masano and Yang. And this last one here, I'm Dan Bauer from Sidewalks. I'm the supervisor for sidewalk inspections, and I did make a mistake on this one. His assessment was recommended to be reduced by the administrative hearing officer to $164.50. For all of these today, I have full files with photos and all the emails that might have gone back and forth and all that other information. Should you request it, I can provide all of that. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you. Any further?
I made a mistake, and yours was reduced to 164.50.
That's what I said.
But I didn't report that to them earlier.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the clarification. If council members want any more data, as we stated before, we don't have a quorum, so we can't make decisions. So we can contemplate this until our meeting where we will make decisions. So thank you very much for your testimony and the clarification from staff. We will move now to our third hearing. Councilmember. Sorry, I didn't see that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My first question is that Mr. Meldahl actually came up and talked about how we should be sending our orders to tenants, and I'm just reading what he provided us, and this is from Rudy Scott versus the Village of Olivia, and it says, since the owner contracted with the tenant for snow removal, the tenant should have received a citation. Well, in a lot of situations, we just don't know who is contracting with who, and so if somebody applies for a rental license, I mean, if they give us the FYI that they're contracting with the tenants to do that, I mean, maybe that would make sense to us. But I mean, for us, my guess is our general policy is just to send it out straight to the owner. And I'm wondering what our city attorney thinks about, just what Mr. Meldahl said, and if we can get a sense of, whether that's correct or not.
Mr. Chair, committee members, I haven't had an opportunity to read the case that was provided by the property owner. But similar to the last hearing we had, I would caution you against getting into a legal analysis or entering into a legal debate. The proper forum for a legal argument is district court, which is the next stage beyond this hearing. At this stage, the city's role is to apply the ordinance, which has clear language, confirm that the work was done, and that the city accounted for its costs.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I get that, but if let's say if the person who lives in Minneapolis is making that sort of claim, I mean, it's a large claim, and it's a claim that in some ways would affect policy for us. And I think, whether we get an answer here or whether we get an answer outside of it, I think it's important to get an answer, because certainly when somebody shows up for a public hearing and they make a claim like that, it's important for us to, have a good answer. Mm-hmm. So I will just let that go. But, I think the other point is, and this is not me trying to be nitpicky, but, I tend to see, public works crews, and I think they work hard. I mean, I don't think anybody's ever bored and not have enough work. I mean, I think there's plenty of work for folks, in the city, and I think they work really hard to, get things done right. And so, I think, in defense of our public works department, they try very hard to do good work. And I think there is a lot of work for them to do. And, I'm sure our public works crew would prefer not to ever have to do this sort of snow removal. And, if they have to, they do because council member offices want it, because neighbors want it, because other folks want it. And that's why they go out there and do what they do. I certainly think this type of snow removal inspection is, something that they prefer not to do.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? With that, we will move to the next item. And then, the general question that we've already taken testimony. We're going to close it.
It's not just testimony, it's the legal recommendation as far as, reading a notice with the renter.
Mm-hmm.
So when my renter is behind in this particular city water bill, as the landlord, I get a notice, turn off notice, right? So as the landlord, when there's snow and ice, I get a letter, they get nothing. So maybe one suggestion is just to leave something on the door. Right?
Sir, call my office. I'd be happy to talk about a procedural modification. So I appreciate that. Thank you. But moving to the hearing, we have item 3, and Director Cockey.
Mr. Chair, Brett Jelly, our Director of Administration, will handle this item.
Morning.
Good morning. Morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Brett Jelly. I'm the Director of Business Administration for the Public Works Department. The purpose of the public hearing today is to hear testimony on the proposed non-governmental tax exempt street maintenance and street lighting assessments. So these assessments hit the same properties. I'll introduce the item for both public hearings and then proceed with the actual public hearings. So Minneapolis has been assessing non-governmental tax-exempt parcels for street lighting and street maintenance operations since 1974. Today's public hearing is for the payable 2016 assessments. We're using the same rate as we used last year. So only properties that either increased in size or are new to the assessment roll got notices for this public hearing today. So for both of these public hearings, there's 1,314 eligible properties in the city. Notices were mailed to 175 properties for the street maintenance and 143 for the street lighting assessments. In past years, that number has averaged around 60, but the county is going through, it's called coordinate geometry conversion, which is tweaking some property sizes, very small changes, but whenever we increase an assessment on a property, so if their property size increases even slightly, their assessment will go up, and then we give them a notice. So, as I said in the past, the kind of property changes have averaged about 60. The last couple of years, it's been more in the 170 range. For the street maintenance assessment, the total assessment is $557,791. The median or middle value assessment for these properties is $202 a year. The average or mean is $424 a year. The street lighting assessment, the total is $111,701. The middle value or median is $40, and the average or mean assessment is $85. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none.
Thank you.
So we have our information for the next two items, but we will take them in order for testimony. And so anyone wishes to speak on item 3, anyone signed in and wish to come forward? Seeing none, we'll end that discussion and then move to item 4. Anyone signed in? Anyone wish to speak? Anyone wish to speak? We'll end that conversation, and with that, we will end this portion of the meeting, and we will adjourn to November 4th, 2015 at 9 a.m., at which time the committee will take action on all items on the agenda. We are adjourned.